Welcome. Let's see, we'll click the OK that we know it's being recorded. So thanks everyone for joining. Let's see, the minutes had gone out before. Any comments on last month's meeting minutes? Sounds good. We have a motion to accept.
Move.
Motion. Tim, I'm getting the same thing right now, and I'm not looking forward to it. I'm taking a lot of Mucinex and other stuff and trying to get like 12 hours of sleep. Not succeeding, but
That's how do you do that?
I don't know.
12 hours, so you have to have time for other things. Anyway, the meeting
Well,
is
actually, it
recorded.
was kind of easy last night because you started to watch the election returns and you're like, oh, you guys are just talking about nothing forever and
I don't want to
agonizing
hear it.
detail.
The meeting
That
is
was easy.
the meeting is in progress. Let's go.
Okay. Is there a second on accepting on the minutes? Peggy, second. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
All right. Let's see. We have two residents on. We'll just go quickly under the resident side of things. Anything? Let's see. Cindy, anything you want to comment on or report?
No, I'm just listening tonight, Scott.
Sounds good. Welcome. And Wendy?
Same here.
Sounds good.
Oh, wait, Scott, I lied. I'm sorry.
Hopefully I didn't lie either.
I couldn't help but notice that Schoolhouse Apartments is listed on the website now.
Oh, good.
Oh.
Is that through the town website or I mean, you noticed before I did.
It's on the town website. So when you log into New Canaan Housing Authority, it lists the properties, here at Millport, Canaan Parish, and then it lists Schoolhouse with a contact.
Okay, great. I mean, that's good. I mean, we're in contact with Brian Holstein, and they have a relatively newer type board, and we'll be talking and seeing how we can end up helping each other with our missions, which will be great.
Oh, okay. So you're not an oversight for them?
No.
Okay.
No. So
thanks for clarifying.
All good.
Thanks.
All right. Why don't we go to manager's report?
All right. Amy, do you want to run through your report quickly if your voice allows you to? Amy's been under the weather.
Part of the sick team. Sorry, Amy.
We might be able, because Amy's voice has been kind of shot, maybe what we should do is, if you all had a chance to take a look at it, if there's any questions you have about it, if you ask questions, we could try to answer them. But, I'm looking at it right now, on the building project side, and compliance and staff side, there's nothing earth-shattering in there or particularly important to discuss. It's kind of routine stuff. Extermination, sprinkler system inspections, silent watchman, which is the cameras. We had some issues with connecting to the cameras remotely. We're trying to get that fixed. Filter changes, snow removal. We're going through quotes for that. Generators are installed and the meters are installed, and I think we're fully up and running now with that, if not extremely close to it. So I think those will be in place and done. TK elevator, we have an elevator issue that we're going to have to deal with. I'll get to that in a second. Sidewalk, we're getting quotes to bring down some of the trip hazards that have been created over time by shifting concrete slabs in the sidewalks. We're getting, if you recall, the door issue over the summer of closing and having difficulty. We're having that fixed, although, as the weather has changed, the door problem goes away. And so it seems like we're throwing money away, but we know that it needs to be done. So we're doing that. I would say from a building maintenance perspective, the biggest issue we're facing at the moment is that, and forgive me, because I don't know if it's phase 1 or phase 2 building, but the elevators that were installed there have hydraulic fluid in them that is vegetable based. And when the project was built, that fluid was used as a sustainability measure. And apparently one of the downsides to it is that over time, as it gets pumped throughout the system, it tends to clump up. And what we're being told is happening is that that in one of our elevators, it's clumping. Again, I apologize, I can't remember which one it is. Doesn't really matter. It's clumping, and what it's causing is the elevator to jump, especially when it comes to a floor. It will stop a little bit higher than the floor and then adjust itself. And the reason it's doing that is it's not moving smoothly because of the clumping of the hydraulic fluid. And so TK Elevator is suggesting that we need to drain that hydraulic fluid, change the gaskets, and replace it with a new petroleum-based hydraulic fluid that has some newfangled whatever that makes it more sustainable than the old style petroleum-based hydraulic fluid. And the bottom line is that they're proposing a cost of $31,000 to do this, which I immediately said a couple of choice four-letter words and called them up and complained. And then I checked with my contact at Kone Elevator, who does a lot of service for us at other properties, to see if this is in fact a legitimate thing. They verified that it is a legitimate problem that has happened elsewhere. They did say that they thought the price was high for the proposed work. So I've gone back to TK Elevator and complained bitterly that this was happening, which, you know, if in fact it is this vegetable-based hydraulic fluid is the problem, it's really not something we can pin on them. But I've asked them to, you know, try and sharpen the pencil on the quote, because they, you know, I was told that the quote's probably heavy by about $5,000–6,000. So that's the rest of the stuff is more routine, smaller dollar things that, you know, aren't terribly concerning. That's the one thing that's a bigger expense that came out of left field and we did not see coming at all. So from a building perspective, that's the only thing I'm worried about at the moment, and need to find a solution for. We do have cash on hand in the operating accounts enough to likely cover it, but you know, $31,000 is $31,000. You know, it's a real
Yeah,
number.
Rick, I have a question.
Sure.
Must TK be the one to do this, or can we look for other people, other companies, other contractors?
Well, the problem that we run into in doing that is that we have a maintenance contract with TK.
Aha.
And so if we go to somebody else to do it and something were to go wrong in the future, we're just setting ourselves up for, you know, a problem, I think, by going outside our
Got it.
maintenance contract.
Well, is our contract annual, or is it more than annual, or
No,
is
it's more than annual, because I tried to get out of it in the past and wasn't able to. It was something that was initiated prior to our being involved, and I forget, you know, 5 or 7 year contract or something like that. I wasn't able to bottom line is I wasn't able to get out of it. And the reason I looked at it is Canaan Parish has elevators that were installed by Kone at construction and are serviced by Kone. And we have TK Elevator, which is formerly ThyssenKrupp at Millport. And I was trying to combine the two into a single service provider, but I wasn't able to. So it's something that I'm going to come back to and try to get out of, but the service contract really isn't the problem. It's the vegetable-based hydraulic fluid. That's the problem, which is not a service-related item. It's a materials problem.
Do you know?
Was the 31 for one elevator or both, or all 4 elevators?
One.
Oh,
Jesus.
God.
Yeah. Do you know if the others have been replaced?
No, they have not. We just haven't had a problem with them.
Yeah. Does Kone service did they service other types of elevators?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
they would service Millport if we could get them the contract. But again, you know,
Yeah.
the problem would still exist. We just might get a little more competitive price out of Kone for the fix than we're getting out of TK.
Mhm.
But if it was 25 or 30, it's not a huge difference between the two. It's still a problem that's requiring a lot of money to fix.
Mm-hmm. And they're not putting back in vegetable onto
No.
hydraulic. They'll put in a
No.
regular. Okay.
It's a newfangled petroleum-based product that apparently has
Plastic.
better life to it than the vegetable-based does, but is still, I guess, semi-sustainable by comparison. So that one was a shock to me because I never even heard of vegetable-based hydraulic fluid. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Would they dump a bunch of Crisco in there or something? Yeah. So anyway, that's from a building perspective, that's our biggest challenge at the moment, is trying to figure out a solution for that. But I don't think there's any easy solution unless there's some other reason why the elevator is reacting the way it is. But so far, based on the research that I've done, that's the likely cause of the actual problem with the elevator, which is the
Bouncing.
re-leveling that it's doing, and not running smoothly the way it's supposed to.
Okay.
And do they,
So
thinking ahead a tiny little bit on the rest of the elevators, I mean, is there anything that can be done to help, so before the clumping happens, to help the other elevators, or?
I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah.
but my guess would be no. The only thing we could do is actually replace it before that problem occurs. And, maybe the problem won't occur for years on the other ones. I just don't know.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Rick, can you check when you get a chance on what the termination date is on the existing contract with TK?
Yes. Let me write that
And
down.
I'm also just wondering if I don't think we have the luxury of doing prophylactic work, but if they're out there and doing one, does it make sense to do two if we had the money? And then ultimately at least we'd have one in each building updated or something. Is there any kind of economy of scale in that? That would be the only question I would have.
Yeah. I mean, not to jump around subjects, but that goes to, Scott, the question you were asking me earlier about coming 12 months. Are there any outstanding expenses outside of normal operations that I see coming? That would be the thing, the biggest that I know of today.
Okay.
How is the snow plowing coming in?
We got last couple of years, we've used the company called Love Your Home. They've done our landscaping work and our snow plowing work, and we've gotten their quote. And to be honest with you, I haven't read it through carefully because they do a very nuanced kind of quote that takes some focus to kind of suss out and understand exactly what they're proposing. But I think we've gotten 2 so far, right, Amy? Yeah, you're on mute, by the way, Amy.
Mute yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, we did get the ones that was sent over to you by Gunnar. I know he was trying to find another one as well. But yeah, I found that I love my home people because they actually do the work that needs to be done during the time of the snowstorms and stuff, cleaning up properly. But I did have a problem with the other gentleman that we had for Canaan Parish. He wasn't able to provide me with the proper backbone of people.
Yeah. So odds are we'll stick with them. One of the things that we're wrestling with, not just at Millport and Canaan Parish, but at all properties, is with the warmer winters that we've experienced in the past few years. Snow contractors are now trying to push everybody to a monthly fee as opposed to a per storm charge. And it's always a roll of the dice, but my inclination is to roll the dice and do a per storm pricing as opposed to a monthly fee. The second quote that came in, they wanted $35,000 each for Millport and Canaan Parish, so 5 months, 7,000 a month. And to me, I immediately said that was, outside of our budget. I think last year we spent closer to like between 20 and 24 each between the two properties, somewhere around that neighborhood. So I'm looking to get it into that range again. But my inclination is to try and go to the per storm pricing and see if we can do the end of the season a little better than that, assuming that we're going to have, another mild winter like we've had in years past, which again, it's a roll of the dice, who knows, but that's my leaning at the moment.
Okay.
The rest of it are basic maintenance stuff. We do have a quote to put some gutter guards in. We'll be reviewing that, but again, that's in the back building up where the trees are, and filling the gutters up. But that's not something you need to worry about. We can handle that. And then we're doing some unit turnovers, unit transfers. We have 4 vacants at the moment. 4 or 3?
It's three vacants
Sorry,
at the moment.
3
Yeah,
vacants.
3 vacants at the moment, and I have dates to be determined on them because I'm waiting for paperwork as well, and I'm waiting for verifications to come back. And then of those, one of those are someone that's coming from Section 8, so we have to get also an inspection done.
Okay. Bottom line or big picture from that is 3 vacants. That's kind of our standard vacancy these days. Anywhere from 1 to 4 seems to be where we're running depending on the month. So that's, I think, a typical and to be expected vacancy rate. So I don't see anything remarkable there or worrisome there. It's kind of what we expect.
Quick question on the Section 8 vouchers again. Do we only get paid our 60 or 80% of SMI for those, or do we get full market rent?
You get the contract rent, which is HUD's or the local, I should say not HUD's, but the local housing authorities determination of reasonable market rent for that unit. So the way it works is that as long as the tenant's portion of the payment is at or below the maximum SMI, state median income rent, you're in compliance with that program and you're allowed to get paid in excess of that state maximum by the Section 8 program. So someone coming with a Section 8 voucher is typically a good thing because we'll get more rent from that voucher than we would if the tenant was just paying under the state maximum amount.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
On the AO report, I noticed on some tenants you have subsidy DSS. Is that a Section 8 voucher?
Yes.
Well, so I see some of those tenants have been living in tax housing, tax credit housing, and have never had Section 8 before. Did they get vouchers now?
Yes.
You did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of people that have applied for, that have been tenants of ours for quite some time now, they applied for it way back when, and they're just getting them.
That's good.
Yep, they're just getting them as the turnovers has come through.
Okay, and then the last 2 things I'll mention is that I emailed to everybody the final finished capital needs assessment for you to sit down with and get really bored reading and try to decipher
It's
the
about
spreadsheet,
time.
decipher the spreadsheets attached to it. I will warn you, it's a little shocking when you read it. It's suggesting that you need a significant amount of money over the next 20 years. I do think that the amount that they're suggesting is needed is overstated, but I'll let you guys read it and draw your own conclusions. But I think it's a good jumping off point to talk about how much money we need to get into the replacement reserve accounts in order to meet what are, expected needs of the property over the next 20 years, assuming you don't ever try to, re-syndicate the properties and bring in new tax credits or find some other source. So I think it's a good jumping off point to start thinking about the next 20 years of the property and how you want to manage its capital needs, and how much you want to address today and how much you want to address in the future.
Rick,
And then,
did you send that out as a separate, you didn't, that's separate from the budget that you just sent out, right?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
I sent them as separate emails there because
Okay.
they're large files. So,
Okay.
And then the last thing I sent out is a spreadsheet similar to what we did last year that shows you side by side the three properties, the actuals for the year with an assumption of the November and December expenses, and then a proposed budget for 2025 for each of the three properties, and then the combined total of all three, looking at it as if it were one single property. And you'll see in the spreadsheet next to each of the properties, you'll see two numbers at the top of the page, 105% and 104%. And those are numbers that I plugged in as suggested rent increase and assumed expense increase in percentage terms. And so as you look at it, if you just change those numbers, the whole spreadsheet will react to those changes. And you can see, based on differing assumptions, what the outcomes will be, not only in terms of net cash, but in terms of debt service coverage ratio, which will be along the bottom. And so, we present it to you as our best estimate of what we think 2025 will bring and what we think a rent increase should be or should look like in order to meet debt service coverage ratios and cash flow ratios and keep the property financially healthy. And I noted on the email a couple of things. One is the assumption of the vacancy rate is higher. It's 5%, which is higher than what we actually experience. If you think about the 3 vacancies we have right now out of 113 units, that's 3 divided.
Yeah.
That's actually 2.5%. So, I'm using kind of underwriting standards for vacancy rates as opposed to what we're actually experiencing. So there's a measure of conservatism built into that spreadsheet. But I think, we know that we've experienced both very low vacancy and somewhat high vacancy. So I think it's prudent to run with that number and kind of base your assumptions on that and not be overly aggressive. The rest of the spreadsheet, I think, is hopefully fairly self-explanatory. And the other thing that's in there that I've assumed is that we would continue making the same contribution to the replacement reserve account that we're doing currently. And in light of the capital needs assessment, you might want to make an assumption that we increase that amount on a monthly basis. And that kind of comes down to, do you want to increase the monthly contribution to the replacement reserve out of the operating account, or do we want to seek alternative sources now or in the near future to try and make a one-time infusion of cash into those replacement reserve accounts? That's food for thought. So anyway, I
would suggest both.
Yeah. So, based on last year, we implemented the rent increases effective February 1st. So if you come, we now have to notify residents 45 days in advance. So we need to make a decision on this prior to mid-December so that we could get out the notices of the rent increase, whatever that winds up being, effective February 1st. And then it will be implemented as residents renew their leases throughout the course of the year in the same way we did last year.
All right, any initial comments or any thoughts as to how to best discuss?
I'm just wondering, did you look at, I know that we do have some residents that are, that are below where they should be, a few anyway. But did you look at scenarios that are in conjunction with COLA, which is like going to be 2.5%?
Yeah, so what I did was for the RAD units in phase 2, I increased those rents 2.5%, not the 5% that we're doing in all of the other places. And then the other thing I'll note is that last year we did I think it was 8% increase on the legacy tenants. But there's not that many of them, so and their rent amounts are low. So I just for evaluation purposes and budgeting purposes, I didn't break that out just because it's not going to move the needle really.
Few $1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that you'd want to do that again. You'd want to do a higher increase amount on the legacy tenants. But in terms of the big picture overall, it's really not going to move the needle. So in terms of simplicity and kind of making a decision at the board level, I just put the 5% on all of the units and moved on from there.
Rick, when you say legacy tenant, what do you mean? What's a legacy tenant?
So Cindy, way back in the very beginning with the old Millport, when they were the low-rise brick buildings,
yes,
there were some tenants there that there were tenants there that are still at Millport now. And so for some of them, they had original rents that were, let's say they reflected the caliber of the housing that was available at the time. And so as they converted and moved over, they ended up, they've experienced rental increases, but they've been in proportion to where they started as opposed to starting where everybody else did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. It's just that I was raised 8% and I'm not a legacy tenant. I've only been here since 2021. And I was raised 8%.
No, you weren't raised 8%, Cindy. You were only raised 3%.
No, I was raised 3% this year. I was raised 8% last year.
No, it wasn't 8%.
No.
I mean, 2 years ago, we did have a bigger increase. It
Right, that's true.
It was something like we had skipped a year of increase period, which was an error on our part. We could get away with it, and then of course it caught up to us in spades, hit by a dump truck the next year.
No, I raised 8%. I'm positive.
10% for the legacy tenants and 8% for everyone else that time.
Oh,
It was
okay.
right after the pandemic.
Yes.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
the first raise. And then the second raise is the 3% and the
3%.
5%.
Right. That's what okay. All right. So, all right. I understand now. Yes. Yes. I was 8% and now 3%. Got it. Yeah. Thanks.
So, I mean, again, I think we're all very cognizant of how difficult it is these days.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of pushback on when I'm doing recertification, and they're already questioning what the raise is going to be. I'm on hold with the February tenants right now with recertification because I don't have a number.
Well, and that's and I mean, again, unfortunately, when you look at the numbers we're dealing with, and I appreciate you guys getting the property assessment because it's very timely, and without it, we're kind of a shot in the dark. With it, again, while I haven't read the whole thing yet, taking a look through it, I don't believe it all, but you don't have to believe it all to know that we're going to need to go ahead and get some serious, increase our reserves and find ways to get other money elsewhere too. So, I mean, I don't think it can be lower than 4. And I think we're seeing inside of our expenses, again, the expenses, it's tough to maintain at 4. And I mean, I think 5 ends up being, unfortunately. Anyone else have any initial reactions?
Yeah, I think, when you say it's tough to get only 4, how about the people that have to pay it at the other end? I think we should discuss this and to make a decision in December, as Rick suggested. So by December, we should have a final answer.
Well,
I yeah, we
right.
hope we have it sooner than later, but because of the 45-day notice, um it would be helpful because I have to get the notices out as well, and then I'll fire up on doing those research as fast as possible. And the way I'm looking at it is those legacy tenants, the majority of them are on fixed incomes. They're on Social Security.
Well, I mean, for the legacy tenants, unfortunately, I think we have to continue with the higher increases because it's again, it's a burden under the property, and we owe the property to keep this going. And again, I think we had agreed upon something like the 8% increases until they got up to market rate, which some of which will never get there. But that's what I recall that we'd agreed upon in the past. Anyone have a different recollection or a reason to change that?
No,
No, I think it was that we
we,
would, whatever we agreed to pay, put the regular tax credit ones. So let's say if it was 3%, we would double it. It would be 6% for the legacy. So depending on, it was double the amount that whatever we decide for the regular tax credit.
Okay.
That's what I recall.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge I think that we face with the property is the legacy tenants are, the rents that they're paying are well below the state max and tax credit max, well below. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to increase them at a faster, higher rate than the rest of the property. I think that makes sense. The challenge, I think, from a big picture perspective is that relative to both state and tax credit, because those are two different maximums, tax credit being higher than state, we're still below those tax credit maximums anyway by a fairly significant amount. The challenge, of course, is that if you were to try to rent at or close to the tax credit max, we'd have a much higher vacancy rate because it's hard to find tenants that can afford those rents. And so it's really a balancing act here between property needs, what the actual market bears and what it would cost somebody to live outside of the property, and keeping vacancy rates low by presenting rents to the marketplace that allows you to keep the property filled. It's a very delicate, very difficult balancing act.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's no good answer to the problem, other than trying to be as modest as possible with the increases, but still provide the property with the income that it needs to operate. And, I think that, well, I'll let you draw your own conclusions. I know I dumped it on you just before the meeting, but you can take a look at it. It's fairly straightforward and you can monkey with it and see. But you guys can come up with your own conclusions as to what you think that number should be.
Hey, Rick, I'll look at the material, but just generally year over year, what's the delta on the increase in expenses? Is it generally tracking inflation or above or below? You have a sense of that?
I would say in the past couple of years, I mean, inflation has been high, as we know. It's now coming down. So I think the increases that we're seeing aren't as big as they were, but in prior 2 years, yeah, increases were tracking what we were seeing in inflation rates, and that has come down. And as an example would be, we've gotten a couple of the most recent contracts are the snow proposals, and they're not significantly different than what they were last season. Whereas 2 years ago, the difference between let's see, we're in 2024, so 2022 to 2023, the differences were greater than what we're seeing. Well, I'm sorry, 2023 to 2024, the differences were greater than what we're seeing 2020. No, I'm saying it wrong still. 2022 to 2023, because it goes over the 2 years. The increases were greater than they are 2023 to 2024, which is now. So
yeah, I was just trying to recollect last year. I think our thought process was to separate out the legacy and to treat them with a little more rapid increase, but then try to, find the middle ground between all the other tenants to track inflation plus a little bit more, or track what our real increases were plus a little bit more. I think that's the conversation we had last year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think what inflation's going to be in the coming year is at this point anyone's guess. I mean, who the hell knows? Um, so I think, I put in 4%. You can change. It could be 3%. It could be 2. I just don't know. So, I tend to be, as everyone knows, conservative with these things. And I think if you assumed a 3% increase over the coming year, you could probably get away with a 3 to 4% rent increase and we'd be okay. I started at 4% and a 5% rent increase. That gets us to a combined 1.19 debt service coverage ratio, which also, satisfies your lenders in terms of debt service coverage requirements. So I'm keeping that in the back of my mind as I'm looking at these. I'm looking at the resultant debt service coverage ratio. So I think that that's something from a big picture perspective to keep in mind too. It's not just cash, it's amount of debt service coverage ratio that becomes important because, we do have to report quarterly to the bank as to how we're doing financially. And so, I think we want to show that we're intending to meet their requirements. And to the extent that we do, that's great. And if we fall short, it wasn't like we were setting it up to fall short, before we even started.
Question, Rick. Are you seeing how convinced are you on these insurance rates? Because I know some property we're seeing, like particularly at our physical plant at our church, that insurance just went up crazily, even though
I
we've
know.
never
I
been
mean,
flooded or anything else. But I didn't know whether these were actual quotes you've gotten, or you just.
well, it's contracts that were under currently. And, as you know, we had the huge increase, the 100% increase, and then we got the quotes from State Farm, which was a big savings over where we were. And so we're still working on that contract. It hasn't come up for renewal yet to where we're getting quotes for the coming year. So, I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
I'm just hopeful that State Farm will keep their rates low relative to everyone else.
Okay.
Unfortunately, all indicators are, to assume anything but the worst is likely not a good idea. We were killed over at Riverwood under our insurance premiums, and it's difficult to even get people to write the stuff. Nevertheless, actually be cost competitive.
Yeah, I mean, if we have the same problem we had previously, where we get a 50% premium increase, that whole budget, you might as well just throw it away and start over again, and it's a whole different animal.
Okay, so for Amy, what do you need the legacy tenant information sooner rather than later, or do you need everybody's information sooner or later, or
Yeah, it would be that we have quite a few research that are being done for February. So yeah, I would be the sooner the better. I mean, try no later than the end of November, I would say. Because we're trying to do giving at least the 45-day notice, but for us giving at least 60-day notice so nobody says that they weren't notified within the 45 days.
Sure. I mean, our next meeting is scheduled for the 4th of December.
So that may work. We could do it that way. As long as I could get that flyer, posted out to everybody for that week. As soon as the meeting happens and the day after, that's no problem. I can do it that night. I'll be there in the office at that time.
All right. So are there any other questions that any commissioners have before trying to go ahead and review this?
Why don't?
Yeah, I mean, it's and the insurance alone is one of those that you're like, it's just so scary as to what that could be and what it does to us.
Yeah, I think it's all over going on, because even my own homeowner's policy has doubled, and I'm like, what the heck? Nothing's changed.
I'm changing carriers too. It's just everyone's getting whacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the past, you get like 5% increases or something, like and all of a sudden you get like a 50.
Not anymore.
Wait a minute, this is crazy.
I don't know if it has to do with everything that's been going on with all the storms and the flooding and all that other stuff going on around.
It does, and luckily we live in an area that doesn't actually have really high losses most of the time, although we've had flooding and that stuff. But unfortunately, insurance is kind of a national thing, and they end up taking it out on everyone. All right, so for commissioners, homework is to go ahead and again review any of the budget stuff, get any questions out, during the month, and we'll be ready to vote on the 4th. I actually have an awards event that evening. So we'll see if I can at least jump in for the first like half hour or something like that.
Does it make sense for us to try to analyze it and then just have a conference call to or so I could do some comparisons and see what recommendations there are?
I think that's a good idea, Peggy.
Or does that become a public meeting? I don't know.
I think it becomes a public meeting, but I mean, we could certainly schedule a special meeting for like the week of the 18th. I mean, in 2 weeks, do we want to try to do a special meeting just to review rent questions? I'm skipping. I think it's better not to do the Thanksgiving week, which is the last week.
It's a good idea. So we all can have something to be thankful for.
I think so. And then we can, if we have to tweak it, between there and the worst case, it'd be the December 4th meeting, but it'd be good to still have a discussion and maybe be able to come up with what the things are. So Rick, you're saying that we can manipulate the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
If we go into edit it. Okay.
Yeah, the easy way to do it is if you look in the columns, you'll see
just change the percentages. Yeah.
Right. You'll see 24 actuals, 25 budget, and then you'll see 105%, 104%. If you just change those numbers to whatever percentage you want, it'll populate through the spreadsheet.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. So let's I guess we can do we need to vote on having a special meeting, or I think we can just call a special meeting?
I think you just call one.
You can call as long as we notify the town in at least 48 hours.
Does the 20th work for everybody? 5:30?
I think so, because I think we have Canaan Parish at 3 that day, right?
The 20th of November. I think I'm away, but I probably still do it.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and between now and then, feel free to email or call me with any questions on the sheet, the numbers, whatever.
Well, it'll take us some time to look at it since we just got the report today.
All right. Moving on, any other public items for Westmount for relating to management report? All right. Let's see, I guess including Westmount under this, just as a quick aside, I'm starting some talks with New Canaan neighbors just about bringing the Canaan Parish financial review into our meetings. And then also just having more discussions as to how we actually manage the property, whether or not we conduct special meetings, we conduct it exactly here, we open up under tenants for both, just trying to establish the structure on that. Rick, is it correct that as far as Westmount's concerned, it would be more efficient and better just to do both of those, both Canaan Parish and Millport here at the same time in a Hank meeting, or?
Yeah, to me, that makes the most sense. Yeah. Because, as the managing member, I guess is the right way to put it, of both properties.
Yep.
It would make sense that I would present, or not I, but Westmount would present to you at one meeting the various properties under your jurisdiction, so to speak, and that way it's one meeting, all the information at one time.
Yep.
It would be great if we got those reports a few days before the meeting so we have a chance to look at them.
Well, I think we got most of our reports
yesterday
this week, right?
Yesterday.
Wow, I looked at them yesterday. Wow. Okay. I mean, so Rick, looking from Westmount's, and Amy and all, I mean, how did, for accounting wise, is really kind of the end of the month, the right, it takes to the end of the month to get the stuff compiled and out?
Yes. Because
Yeah, I
we're
mean,
waiting like on the last minute payment, people that are paying the last minutes, basically.
Okay.
yeah, third or fourth week of the month, reporting on the prior month is, I think, that's fine. That works.
So are we too early having our meetings on the first of the month following the month? I mean, following, so we're 5 weeks out from close of the prior month.
Right. I'm saying we can pull that forward. You can pull that
Okay.
to 3 or 4 weeks out. So if you had the fourth week of every month, so if you had, October, pick a number,
Yep.
23rd, reporting on September.
I think the one issue under that is unfortunately like that last week of the month. I mean, you get messed up under Memorial Day. I mean, nothing will fall on the stuff, but it just ends up being Memorial Day and Christmas and Thanksgiving. Whereas first week of the month, you end up basically having 4th of July and Labor Day, I guess.
Mhm.
All right. Well, why don't next for next meeting, why don't everyone sort of check your calendars and let's decide if we want to modify and pull the meeting up a week or so, or keep it right where it is. It's probably 6 or 1.
Scott, I'll make a suggestion. Each January, I present the calendar to the town clerk. Since we only have 1 month left, let's stick with it for December and then decide what we want to do for 2025.
Yes, I concur. So if we just come for the next meeting ready to discuss that so we can put out next year's calendar if we're going to do any switches.
Yeah. I mean, like the financials that we have are, the end of September. We're already into November. And that,
Right.
because it's just, you can't get them
That's the
out that
thing
fast. Yeah.
That's the thing that always confuses me is that, we're giving you property status reports, which are a weekly thing for us. So we're giving you basically last week's property status report, but we're giving you a month ago's
financials.
And so they don't line up.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. So I don't know, do we go to executive session to really quickly just talk with Westmount and then come back to discuss other items, or discuss other items? And that, I mean, because a lot of the other stuff I don't think applies to Westmount, but
I think so. I think we go to executive session, talk about any kind of
confidential tenant issues.
Discretion issues. And then if we need to talk as a board, then Westmount can log off too.
But then I think for public side, we need to come back in for other discussion.
We have to come back in after executive session to adjourn.
So Amy and Rick, I mean, if you were to just take a really rough stab under confidential tenant issues, I think this is a 5-minute, 10-minute, 2 hour.
No.
Closer to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So for those who have joined us, who are non-commissioners and non-Westmount, we're going to go to executive session, and then we'll probably come back in literally, hopefully, about 5 minutes or so. So this should be very quick. So I'm going to have to ask you, unfortunately, under Zoom, it's a little bit tricky. Typically, we just ask you to leave the room for 5 minutes, but Zoom-wise, if you could leave for 5 minutes. I mean, right now I have 6:22, and we will plan to be back in session probably 6:28.
So Scott, Wendy and I are supposed to log out and log back in?
Correct.
Oh, okay. That's manageable. Bernie, let us back in now. Don't forget us.
I won't.
Okay.
And what time is it again?
So I have right now 6:22. So by the time you're
Okay.
out or something, that'll be 6:23, and then we'll be back in at 6:28 or 6:29.
Now, Scott, do we really need that much time to have a public session after executive? Usually we don't.
We don't use their any.
Right, but there's a couple of other things that I think now need to be discussed under the public side of things as opposed to under executive.
All right, I'm putting recording on pause. We got to vote to go into public session.
Do I have a
Executive
motion to
session.
move to executive session? Penny's good. Tim seconds it. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right, so right, so Cindy, Wendy, and Michael, if you guys could drop for a little bit, and then again, we'll see you again in 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay, sounds good,
Okay.
Scott.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
And Michael, are you actively listening, or you
Bernie, can you put him in the waiting room?
I can't put him in the waiting room. I can just make him leave the meeting,
can you
but I don't know if he's there.
see here real quickly, Michael?
Oh yeah, I can put him in the waiting room.
Okay. And
All
I'm
right.
just I'm just texting him that we went to
Executive session.
We're recording.
all right. So in that case, Westmount, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. And why don't we go, if you could start going ahead and sending Canaan Parish financials to this group too, that would be appreciated. And we'll just start doing a quick review of those, at each meeting also.
Okay, I got the review. All right, I'm going to let everybody back in.
All right.
Okay, thank you guys.
All right. Thank you much.
Good night.
Thanks, Westmount.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Feel better, Amy.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, guys.
I think Bernie's probably going to ask that question as to the 0287 number. Just if you'd identify who you are.
Yeah, that's
Wendy?
Wendy.
That's Wendy. Good. Okay.
We know her by now. We don't have to put her name up there. We have Cindy, who's also Cynthia,
Yep.
Yeah.
and Michael Dinan.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyone else have any other new business or items before we talk a little bit under Riverwood? All right. So as everybody knows, we closed on Riverwood. It was far more dramatic than it should have been. We learned a whole lot, and trying to close on a $75 million property with $2.5 million is very difficult, but we did it. Lot of huge support from the community. Everybody along the way, when asked, they all stood up and helped out and assisted under things. Some more than others, some a little bit difficult, but everyone eventually ended up stepping up, which was good. We end up being the owners. We still have a little bit of like asset management stuff to go over with Chuck and David, who are our asset managers for the property. We'll work out a reporting system and make sure that we're kept in the loop on everything. We were going to, there was issues with the subordinate bonds at the very end, and Royal Bank of Canada took them down and held them. And we were going to go ahead and do a moral authority letter from the town, which might have allowed us to rewrite the $24 million worth of subordinate debt at a far more advantageous interest rate. So going from like a 6 down to like a sub 4.5. There was risks and costs associated with that. And in the meantime, Vanguard stepped up and looks like they're buying the entire issue. So that takes away both a windfall and a potential downside and puts us basically at a zero stance, which is good. And again, allows the deal to close and everything to happen. Probably for housing authority, one of the tricky parts is that, we basically used all of our funds and all of the available deferred developer fee from prior from the Millport projects to fund this, to fund our portion of it. And it will put us down at a low number. So we've gone from, a few $1 million down to, a few $100,000. And of course, this was before we got that summary of sheet of what we need to do to really maintain Millport. Not much we can do about that. I will be sort of briefing the town and telling them what happened. As we know, the town loaned us $4 million, which did go into the deal essentially as equity for us. We do owe a VIG on that, which will be paid for out of the project. And we may go ahead and need to borrow more money from the town in order just to bring us back up to a safe operating level. but we also may already be there. So we're just trying to figure that all out. And I will, notify the town bodies that, again, don't forget what we did in order to make this happen. It was really a heroic effort on Hank's part. And quite frankly, it's still kind of surprising we were able to pull it off. So this was a good thing. And for the town, again, it's ideally a really great thing. Again, just setting us up under, immediately we get some workforce housing, and then we end up having a stock of units that over time, as we need them for moratoriums, we'll be able to draw them down. So any questions from anyone?
So I assume we're talking about Avalon.
Riverwood, Cindy, Riverwood.
What is Riverwood, Scott? Riverwood.
Riverwood is that big development right next to Canaan Parish. People used to know it as Avalon, but.
Oh, and how does one get into Riverwood?
Well, right now, the affordable units are at 80% of AMI, which is substantially higher than SMI, which is state median income, which is what the Canaan Parish, the Canaan Parish affordable and the Millport affordable units are. So, but if you're interested, you can absolutely talk to the folks over at the office there, which is Graystar, and they would be happy to go ahead and give the info.
Well, more curiosity since I lived there for almost 15 years when it was Avalon. Yep. But yeah, more out of curiosity than anything else. Are you going to keep the pool?
Yes. I mean, the vast majority of the units, I mean, as of right now, 83 of the units will remain market rate.
Market rate.
Really,
okay.
Really, it'll go back to how it was before. Actually, it'll come back to the 20% affordable. However, the affordable will be at AMI versus SMI. So again, quite frankly, it's pretty much the way that the development used to be.
Right. And it's substantially higher, you're saying, than here.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate the info.
You bet. And just for a scope of magnitude on how complicated the deal is, over the last 4.5 months, in my Project A file, I have just under 3,400 emails.
Wow.
It was,
so what is it called now, Scott? What do we call it? Riverwood
at New Canaan.
Riverwood at New Canaan. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Got it.
All right. So, I mean, any questions under Riverwood or? Very well. And then again, just as we discussed earlier on, we'll be talking with New Canaan neighbors about, how we can best share responsibilities on Canaan Parish and make sure that, we're fulfilling our responsibilities. And certainly we've been partners for a very long time and we'd like to remain partners under stuff. We'll see what, as the board expands, hasn't been expanded. We'll see what the new board says, what they want their, which will be interesting. All right. Any other new issues or other thoughts or?
Well, Scott, when as Riverwood, right now they're just getting on board, and so they're having weekly meetings and more often sometimes. Will they also be folded into the Hank meetings?
Actually, that's a good question, and it actually gets a little bit under the governance. Peggy stepped up just as I asked her to go ahead and try to handle a bunch of the marketing and transition questions and issues. We're going to be in a little bit of an interesting spot as to, how do we end up managing these projects? With Westmount, it's good that we'll have the same property manager there in order for Canaan Parish and for Millport. But my guess is that we probably ought to have some sort of, somebody paying attention to each of the projects. Up to date, so far in just very nominal terms. I know people have paid attention to various things everywhere, but, Bernie, you paid special attention under Millport, and Peggy's paid special attention under Canaan Parish. And obviously people have helped out on different projects and other items and other things. But having somebody, if either Mike or Tim, if we're able to go ahead and get a little bit of added focus, just helping to go ahead and handle the general flow of stuff and making sure the board knows what's going on, that would probably be very helpful. And then during the board meetings, whether or not, we'll still get reports from our professionals, but at least if we have somebody looking along and, along the way, making sure that if the professionals aren't telling us everything, that we have an inside view on something. So that's a very loose thought process as to how we can manage this. Anyone have any other thoughts or ideas on how this
No,
can?
I think that's a good idea. I still need to take that tour that I was supposed to take that I didn't. I think I should.
For Avalon or sorry, for Riverwood or for
Avalon?
Yeah.
No, Riverwood.
The Riverwood. Mm-hmm. The wood.
Into the woods.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll talk with you guys a little bit more and just try to figure that part out. But yes, we should have financial reporting from Greystar that gets reported here. Again, most of the stuff, once we get stabilized and good, which we're pretty close to stabilized now, but there'll definitely be some transition costs. And we did lose a couple of tenants right up front as, we were not able to communicate with them until recently. And so there's some stuff with that, but hopefully we'll get that back in line very quickly.
Sounds good.
The Affordable Housing Committee skipped a couple of months of meetings, giving time for Riverwood to kind of come to a conclusion. I think they have another meeting coming up on the 11th, I think, which I'll attend and I'll report back to you. I think they're my sense is that just trying to rethink maybe the approach now, given the Riverwood acquisition. But we'll see.
I'll be at that. John asked me to attend that meeting, and I'll speak and sort of bring up to date on Riverwood there. And again, I mean, my personal feelings, and I don't know if other people feel similar, but I mean, I think Riverwood is not an answer. It's a partial solution. It makes sure that we're going to get our next moratorium, and it can jumpstart us toward the one after that. But if we were to convert the entire project to affordable, that's a lot of money. And again, it may be worthwhile for the town to do that, but there's a lot of costs associated with that. And in the meantime, though, it's nice that instead of having to come up with 20 or 30 units, and well, who knows how many we'll actually have to, but for 10 to 15 units, we know where those are coming from. And in the future, we'll be able to get more and be able to help more in that process. So again, we're looking 8 years out, but 8 years, by the time you find a piece of property and secure it and go through approvals and get buy-in from the town and finance it and build it, that's kind of tomorrow.
Yeah,
which means we've got to all replace ourselves and make sure our successors make this all happen.
And assuming no change to the statute that,
Yeah.
That's it. And by the way, Tim has volunteered to go ahead and sort of take a board focus on Riverwood, which is great, and I appreciate that, Tim. And we'll Peggy's been under some of those meetings, and probably if you run together for a little while, and then you can end up taking that together. So Peggy will forward you some info on that, and we'll start having you jump in on those. And then make sure you invite Bernie to go for a tour at some point. I will say for a lot of it, Bernie, you can just go you can tour the clubhouse anytime that you want. And
I know, and Chuck actually said he was going to do that. I'm still waiting to get back to him.
Yeah. And then just as walking as far as walking around, it's a really nice property. I mean, it's set up well, it's done great. At some point along the way, we'll take a look and see also whether or not, it probably is impossible due to the financing, but whether or not, between Canaan Parish and Millport, could we or Canaan Parish and Riverwood, could we carve off another little section and put up 10 more units? I mean, but again, unfortunately, those are all controlled by different bondholders and maybe too difficult from a financing perspective, but always worth trying.
Maybe not this lifetime, or maybe it's the next lifetime. So.
All right. Any other items or issues? Sounds good. I think Kim, get better, and I hope I don't get as bad as you do, but I keep feeling the voice going away. So I'll go home and go to bed.
Yeah, do that. Good idea.
All right.
I'm going to do the same.
Well,
thank you, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn? From Peggy, a second.
Seconded.
That's Bernie. All in favor?
Aye.
Nice.
Favor, aye.
Awesome. So we'll see you guys on the 19th for a special meeting.
Yeah, and that's gonna
Okay.
be at 5 o'clock or
Just give me a
19th and
heads up so
20th.
I can file it.
Maybe 5:30, I think.
5:30? Okay.
Scott, you said the 20th,
I
Scott.
thought you said the
20th,
20th.
20th. Sorry
Yeah,
about
it's the
that.
20th at
Thank you,
5:30.
Cindy. Yeah, that Wednesday.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks, Cindy.
So it's gonna be
Okay.
5 o'clock, not 5:30?
It'll be 5:30
The
on
notice
that.
will go out
Yeah,
as required by the town.
right.
So you'll get the information.
Thanks, Bernie.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Feel
Cheers.
better. Feel
Thank
better.
you. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.